Parents, the following program is intended for people over the age of 13. If your kids are younger than that, please use the YouTube Kids app.
Welcome to Scary Stories, the channel that tells you scary stories.
Peter Bernard's Scary Stories for Adults.
Welcome to Scary Stories NYC. I'm your old pal Bigfoot. Do we have any Uber or Lyft or other kinds of drivers out there in the audience? This story today was sent in to us by one of you, and it's supposedly a true story. Before we get to that though, let me point out the exciting news that today's executive producer is one of our newest channel members, Kathy Barrickman. Thank you, Kathy Barrickman. With you on our side, we know we can. We can accomplish our master plan with the support of Kathy Barrickman. If you would like to be epic, godlike, and eternal like Kathy Barrickman, just click the join button under this video screen to become a channel member like her. Or you can accomplish the identical thing by joining our paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com. In either case, you'll get access to over 9 hours of scary, uncensored Dogman stories far too wild for this channel, plus a new secret uncensored story each week at peterbernard.com. Once again, thank you, Kathy Barrickman. We couldn't do it without kind and supportive people like you. And now, for our main attraction, a Dogman story sent in to us by a cab driver from Michigan. This is a very recent story, so recent that the storyteller admits to still feeling a bit shell-shocked from the encounter. Let's be patient with them as they sort out their emotions and put their life together after the traumatic series of events we've chosen to call Cab Driver Sees Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've been a driver since I was in my 20s and have worked for various companies along the way. I worked as a yellow cab driver in a major city for almost 5 years, and I've driven for more than one of the Uber-like companies, although not Uber itself. I've been driving in Michigan for over a decade now, and once in a while, when I drive a special passenger, we hit it off, and I give them my card. Then, when they need to go somewhere, they book it with me personally. I give them a discount off of the official rate, and I don't have to share anything with a middleman. Some people try to tell me that's not ethical or legal or something, but what could be more legal than a friend driving his friends around? And what could be more ethical than the friends reimbursing him for his efforts? It's a friendly world. Little did I know that such friendly displays of friendliness would lead to a direct confrontation with the most unfriendly of all Earth's creatures, the North American upright walking canine. So it happened that I got a text message the other night from one of my friends, and he asked if I could come get him from his home to go to another address in Michigan. I had been hurting for funds a bit, so I was glad for the extra fare that day. Most of my clients these days call me during the day to drive them to and from shopping trips. I don't charge them extra to wait for them up to an hour, and if I can see the lines are extra long, I'll give them 2 hours wait time free. I bring my laptop and devices with me so that even if I'm stuck 3 hours in a parking lot waiting for someone to shop, I'm still getting my other work done and keeping productive. I had been driving home from what I thought was my last trip of the day, and it was now almost dark out. But this was a client I genuinely like. He had always had really cool and funny stories about his life. He does all kinds of things and hangs around with exotic women, at least according to his stories. I had always driven him alone though, so I didn't really know what was real or what was just him boasting. This night, when I showed up at his place, I got to meet 2 of the exotic women in person. My client let's call him Bud, was already waiting for me out in front of his place with his arms around two very glamorous women standing on either side of him. Let's call them Twinkle and Twankle. They were both wearing metallic-looking clothing and had elaborate hair. Twinkle was a beige-skinned blonde woman, and Twankle had very pale skin with jet-black hair. They both were generously proportioned, and if it weren't for the extremely expensive-looking jewelry that both were wearing, I might have thought them ladies of the night. But the accessories were not merely ornamental, they were extremely expensive status symbols, marking these two young women as rich party girls. So it seemed Bud's wild tales did have some truth to them after all. The three of them piled in, and I could tell they were a bit loose already. Bud and the blonde both informed me that we were going to the house that the dark-haired young lady's daddy had rented for her to stay in while she was in America. I said fine and asked them where that address was. Neither of them could remember, so they began trying to get the answer out of the pale-skinned girl who, as it turned out, didn't understand English very well. I think she was either French or Belgian because the way she spoke was incredibly cute. I had no idea what she was saying, but I wished she could have been saying it to me. What a language, that French, or Belgian, or whatever. My client, Bud, he's living the life. The blonde girl with the tan grabbed the French one's pocketbook to try to find something with the address on it, which caused the other one to freak out and throw a fit, thinking she was being robbed. They were quite a show. I should have been paying them for the entertainment. Eventually, and I don't remember how, it was determined which path I should drive, and we ended up heading north, driving up toward Canada. The location of the home was between two big state forest areas, in a place in Michigan I would not have known existed if I had not driven to it myself. The first half of the drive was normal, taking highways like regular people. The second half involved driving along roads that had no buildings on either side of them, which led to forks in the road. I think I was supposed to go left, right, left, or something like that. I didn't really have to remember, though, because at each juncture they would either call out left or right from the back seat, and then I would proceed. We managed to reach the destination, a mansion in the woods, and as they piled out, the sound of the night was so loud. It was literally louder than city noises at night. The crickets and frogs or whatever was out there, it was like they were putting on a concert. It surprised me and made me feel a little uneasy. I asked for my client to go over the left, right, left thing again for me on the way out. I wasn't sure if I remembered how to go in reverse. They didn't care, though. They were happy to be able to get back to partying, and they went inside, assuring me that I would figure it out. Great. I looked around. The night was dark. It was coming up on a full moon in another couple of days, but it didn't even matter. Even with that, it was still just dark. It shouldn't have mattered to me, but it did. All of a sudden, I got cranky at Bud. I wished he'd invited me inside. I sure wished I could be in their luxury rented mansion rather than driving home through a dark northern Michigan forest in the middle of the night, unsure of which way I might turn which would lead me back to the highway, and which way I might turn that would lead me deeper into absolutely nowhere. So I took a deep breath, told myself that this was going to be nothing, got back in the car, and started driving. I was already confused by the second fork in the road. It sure didn't look the same as it had coming from the other direction. Had I made a wrong turn at the first fork? I looked around for familiar-looking trees, but saw none. Uncertain if I should head back and start over, I made a decision to go right, and I continued along the unfamiliar-looking path to the next intersection. I think this time I chose the left possibly, but I don't really remember exactly. This time, I drove for a few minutes and still didn't see any other intersection for a long time. I was trying to remember if any of the distances between the forks had been this great, but to be honest, I had been distracted by the party that was going on in my back seat, and I hadn't been paying as much attention to the roads as I should have been. I began to get scared, and I started to feel my face blushing. I don't know why I blush when I'm scared. I guess I find it embarrassing to realize that I'm in danger and it's my own fault. I really should have made a U-turn right then, because the road in front of me just kept stretching on and on and on. I didn't, though, because I wanted to see what was at the next intersection ahead. Maybe it might be something better than I'd find by heading back and starting over. Maybe I'd discover a shortcut out of the woods. You know, in the middle of the night, driving through the forest, your logic sometimes doesn't function the way it would during the day driving on the highway. What seemed logical to me that night might not be something I would still describe that way during the sunlit hours. The path began to wind. Left, right, left, the turns growing ever sharper. I could no longer see very far ahead or behind me because the twisting nature of the road caused trees to block my view in any direction. This had not happened on the way in, so I knew for a fact that I was now being an explorer. I was off track, and I was probably wasting my time, but I still held out hope that around one of these turns ahead was going to be a sign telling me I was near a local highway. Any local highway. I was no longer picky, and so I made a right around a turn, and what I saw caused me to screech to a halt. There was something in the middle of the road. It was not entirely blocking the way, but it was wide enough to nearly block off the entire road in front of me. My eyes stared, but my brain failed for some time to interpret their signal. What was I looking at? The strange shape in front of me began to move, the center part going upward, and I began to comprehend that I was witnessing some kind of hairy creature that was facing away from me in the middle of the road. I was viewing its hairy back as it was apparently in the process of standing up in a bipedal fashion from the squatting position it had been holding before I screeched to a halt so close to it. As it stood, I could see there was something on the road beyond it, possibly roadkill or something of that nature. I seem to have interrupted someone's meal. Thinking I was making a bear sighting, I reached for my cell phone. I wanted to take a picture. In that moment of distraction, as my eyes went away from the creature in front of me to looking on my passenger seat for my phone amidst my other junk, the bear leaped on the hood of my car, slamming its face into my windshield, baring its teeth at me, and barking so loudly that I might have been deafened, if not for being sealed in my vehicle. This was not a bear after all. It was some kind of very frenetic dog, but a much larger one than I had ever seen. I screamed. Terrified, the fangs of this prehistoric monster inches away on the other side of that glass. I saw it try to bite through to get at me. I saw its eyes and how badly they wanted to consume me and end my story permanently. I stared down the creature's throat at one point. I had never actually been so close to something that wanted to eat me in my life. I'd never really been treated like I should be a meal before. It's a rather unsettling experience as it turns out. Not just the fact that you might be about to be in excruciating pain, that you might even expire soon from the next thing that happens to you. Not just the horror of potential pain in your forthcoming departure from this mortal realm, but also the look of contempt in the monster's eyes as it regards you. You can see in those eyes that your entire life, all your achievements, setbacks, accomplishments, and memories were meaningless because all you really are in those nasty eyes are some calories, a midnight snack. Everything that we think has value, everything that we strive for. It's a joke to the Dogman. He laughs at our civilization. He laughs at art. He laughs at culture. Heck, Dogman even laughs at Dogman stories. He holds our entire culture in contempt. To him, all our cities are just farms producing protein for him to pick off whenever he gets hungry. We spend our lives arguing over what is fair and what is just and what is right. We are often driven to live and die for principles, for ideas which we hope will make the world a better place. Well, the Dogman doesn't care what's fair. The Dogman doesn't care what's just. And the Dogman doesn't care what's right. The Dogman just feeds his belly. And everything we spend our lives doing makes as much sense to him as so-called junk DNA makes to our current-day scientists. Between you and me, I doubt all that information is junk. I'd be more inclined to think that it's just information that we haven't advanced enough to comprehend the meaning of. But the scientists don't care. They just call it junk because they don't know what it means. And so our entire culture, all our cultures, are junk to Dogman. I found and settled on the idea that everything humans have ever striven for becomes meaningless once one of these creatures devours one of us. If there were enough of them, they would finish us off, and nothing we ever did would have ever had a point to it. I can't describe how profoundly and deeply paradigm-shifting this was for me. I had lived in a world where I was the most important thing, and human society existed to advance into the Captain Kirk future where we would teleport wherever we wanted to, and we would date green-skinned women. But there exists a possibility, a reality or dimension where we lose out to these Dogmen, where they take over the planet and cruelly eliminate all science, all music, all comedy, all thought, all politics, all art, all philosophy. And they won't even know that they eliminated it, because to them, it will appear as nothing but junk. I feel like that moment in the car has never left me, and that I will always coexist with it. I will never not be inches away from the fangs of some impossible prehistoric beast. My friends say it's just that it happened so recently, and that I won't feel this badly about it a week or a month or a year from now. I hope they're right, but right now, this feels permanent. The Dogman, inches from my face, the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me that didn't involve an injury. I did not get a single scratch on me. I was not harmed in any way physically, but emotionally, I was changed into an entirely different person than I had ever been before. I am no longer able to take my own existence, or the dominance of humans, for granted. I am now afraid to drive out into the country, even during daytime. I feel like we humans belong together, and we should stick close together. We evolved to be social animals for a reason. We were not built to be alone out in the forests. I know there are people like Survivor Man who make a living out of doing just this, but that underscores my point. We're fascinated with those who can survive alone in the wild because we know deep down that we weren't created to be able to do that. The strength of our species has always been in our ability to work together to accomplish things. Going off alone into the wilderness is just asking for trouble, in my new and current opinion. We don't run planet Earth, not at all. We just run our cities and towns. And in quiet times, we're also able to maintain transportation systems connecting these regions that we feel we control. But when we travel between these fortifications, just as in ancient times, we take our lives into our hands because there be monsters. There in those woods live all the things we don't want to admit live there. And those places are their turf. Those places don't belong to us. Those places are not meant for us to go. So there I was, And there I still am in my memory and in my mind, sitting in shock, staring at the inhuman eyes inches away on the other side of my windshield, unable to experience any namaste moment in those seemingly soulless and yet very animated eyes. It made me wonder if this was a demon, and it also made me wonder what a demon actually is. Was this just a hungry animal? Or was this something which came from somewhere else? I saw it bang on my windshield with the sides of its fists. What animals are capable of making fists? Dogs have paws. This thing had front appendages that ended in paws or claws, capable of bunching themselves into what looked just like human fists to me. That ability to swing the forearms that way and bang the glass with the fists, that is not something a dog could do. So the fact that the creature had a canine face, canine teeth, ears, and eyes, none of that means I had a dog on the hood of my car. Just as the fact it had fists does not mean I had a human or primate on my hood either. Mind you, this happened in America, not New Zealand, so I don't think it was some kind of marsupial. I think it was either a mammal that is not yet classified by science, or I think it was something from somewhere else, something truly alien, if not from another planet. I think it came from another reality, and that Michigan's wild areas must contain doorways. Some people call them portals. Some people call them windows. Others call them vortexes or vortices. In any terminology, I'm referring to the places in the world where one can appear to walk into another world that is not the same as ours. Think of it as a disambiguation page for reality, or think of it as a start screen on the video game of life. But I think there are places we can be in which we can enter other worlds, and creatures from other worlds can enter ours. Obviously, none of these theories are mine. They go back at least to the early 20th century in the work of Einstein and others. Plus, these ideas are embedded in a number of ancient traditions, most notably from the East. The only reason I feel such a passion for this subject right now is because of what happened to me last week. Staring down the throat of a creature larger than me that wanted to devour me forced me to become interested in all of this. The mind seeks to make sense out of insanity. The health crisis situation has placed extra pressure and stress on my life, same as it has for almost everybody. I can't deal with impossible things happening to me on top of all this. There has to be a reason for what happened to me, and it has to make sense. I won't allow it to be anything else, because that would literally make me feel insane. I will not live in a world where I let this thing get to me and drive me nuts. I hold tight to the notion that, even if none of this is explained in my lifetime, I know for a fact that there is an explanation. I hope the human race survives long enough to figure it all out. But even if we don't, I know that there is an answer, a logical answer behind any and all of this. I will not allow fear to consume me, and I will not give in to superstition or insanity. I haven't explained yet how the incident ended, and I think that's because my escape is not what changed every paradigm in me. The shocking experience itself did. The fact is, I got away due to robotic instinctual behaviors exhibited by some part of my nervous system not normally involved in waking life, while my conscious mind accepted its own mortality and went into a sort of a state of shock, staring at those fangs, tongue, and drool. Some sleeping part of my mind came awake and put my car in reverse. It drove me backwards, at first nonsensically, as the Dogman was being carried on my hood along with me. I was not escaping from it, but I was beginning the long and tedious task of retracing my steps so that I could get out of the forest. As my head was turned behind me, watching where I was driving backward, I felt the weight lift violently and suddenly off the front hood. Turning my head back around, I saw the creature leaping into the woods and registered that I was no longer being tormented by it. I just turned and looked out the back again, and robotically continued backing up to take the other turn at the last fork in the road. I don't remember much else that night, but I got home and parked the car and got to bed somehow. I know this because I woke up in my room the next morning and my car was parked out front. My phone was full of texts that morning from Bud wanting me to pick him up from that mansion, then a final text saying he called himself another driver since I hadn't responded. It was just as well. I would have had to turn him down anyway. I don't want to go back to that mansion ever. I don't even want to leave town, to be honest. I'm still a little freaked out by the idea of the country and trees. For now, at least, I don't even want to go out there during the days. This has made my job hard. There are some shopping malls I no longer want to drive people to because they involve driving through too much wooded countryside. I am currently considering moving back to a larger city once this crisis finally dies down. Maybe I can get my medallion and become an old-school legit cab driver, one that can deliver people only within city limits and turn down all rural fares. Never again do I want to have a reason to title a story, Cab Driver Sees Dogman.
I shall return. Like last night's triple lupa, I shall return. I'll be back here May 23rd to help host our Memorial Day Military Dogman stories. All stories alleged to have happened to military service people or veterans. I'm going to read one of the stories myself. You won't want to miss it. It should prove to be quite memorial.
And now, get ready for an all-new, completely uncensored, slightly bloody, and absolutely terrifying new Dogman story. Oh, wait. YouTube won't allow me to tell you stories like that on this channel. If you want to hear that, you're going to have to go to peterbernard.com and sign up for our paid subscribers club. You can choose any price you can afford for a 1-month subscription, and then every weekend, we tell you a story YouTube would never allow us to tell you on this channel. See you this Sunday for an all-new, very scary, completely uncensored Dogman story.
Come back for more scary stories.